Han Li never planned to fight them, because from the very beginning, his target was never the battle, it was the divine blood. While spatial tempering giants clashed with a primordial monster, while entire factions risked their lives for a single treasure, Han Li was already hiding in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, in the exact instant the battle ended, when everyone thought victory was theirs, the divine blood vanished, and by the time they realized what happened, Han Li was already escaping, with 3 peak experts chasing him down. But what none of them knew was this: they were hunting a man who had already disappeared. I really love making these videos, but I need your support to keep going. Please like, share, and subscribe so I don't have to give up on this dream. Han Li directed his gaze toward the surface of the pond. Aside from its exceptional clarity, the water appeared entirely ordinary, with nothing else that distinguished it. As Han Li was still feeling puzzled, City Lord Lan examined the 3 identical young men and suddenly asked, "I've heard that within the Silver Moon wolf race there exists a mutated wolf demon that, with the help of a powerful being, cultivated its 3 heads into separate avatars. Each avatar possesses cultivation at the peak of the nascent soul stage, and when combined, they can contend with a deity transformation cultivator. Could the 3 of you be those avatars?" The 3 young men laughed in unison. One of them replied calmly, "I didn't expect our reputation to spread this far." "That's correct, we are the Cerberus Moonwolf. We've also heard of you, City Lord Lan. Would you care for a spar?" I have no time for such matters." City Lord Lan ignored the provocation and turned his attention to the young woman. "Fellow Taoist, Xiao, what is your purpose in entering the valley alone?" "My purpose?" The young woman smiled faintly. "Didn't Senior Huan mention that spirit tribe cultivators are attempting to capture a so-called traitor within this pond? Naturally, I came to stop them." City Lord Lan observed her for a moment, then glanced at the pond. "I see. It's good that you have such intentions, fellow Taoist Xiao. In that case, please proceed. I will guard the pond to prevent any spirit tribe beings from entering." "How does that sound?" The young woman hesitated slightly upon hearing this, then chuckled as she glanced at Tu Tuo and the other nascent soul cultivators beside him. "If you hadn't arrived, I might indeed have entered the pond myself. But since you're here, I'll leave this opportunity to you, Brother Lan. Surely you wouldn't expect a frail woman like me to take the risk in your place. I've heard you possess a water-warding jade rhinoceros horn. Such a treasure would be quite useful underwater." "I can enter the pond city," Lord Lan said coldly, his expression darkening. "But you must take your people and leave the chaotic valley first." With the pretense of courtesy gone, the young woman's expression cooled. She gave a faint snort and fell silent. At this critical moment, neither side was willing to yield. City Lord Lan's lips moved slightly as he communicated with Tu Tuo through voice transmission, a trace of killing intent flickering in his eyes. On the opposing side, aside from the young woman and the 3 identical youths, there were only 3 other metamorphosis stage demonic cultivators. Meanwhile, the human side still had 7 or 8 nascent soul cultivators, in addition to City Lord Lan and Tu Tuo, giving them a clear advantage. No one else had reached the pond after so much time, indicating that spirit tribe beings were blocking the others. Thus, reinforcements were unlikely for either side in the near future. If either faction obtained the divine blood first, there was no chance they would truly divide it as previously agreed. Everyone understood that the agreement had merely been a formality, a temporary arrangement to facilitate cooperation. Sensing the growing hostility, the young woman frowned slightly and used a secret technique to alert her subordinates. At the same time, she flicked her sleeve and an object slipped into her hand. The tension grew palpable. A clash seemed inevitable. At that moment, the ground near the pond began to tremble violently. The calm surface of the water suddenly churned and surged. Strands of white light burst forth, some shooting skyward, while others descended toward the surrounding cultivators. Wherever the light struck, it pierced countless needle-sized holes into the nearby rocks. Both sides were alarmed and quickly activated their techniques or treasures to defend themselves. At the same time, a blinding radiance emerged within the clear water, as if a sun were rising from its depths. As the pond roiled, an intense wave of heat erupted from the white light. What's happening? Are the spirit tribe cultivators below causing this? Hanley, concealed in the air above, had also been forced to evade the streaks of light. Seeing the strange phenomenon, he was deeply startled. He was not alone. The young woman, City Lord Lan, and the others were equally confused. This isn't right. The scorching light should remain within the pond. How can it escape? Could it be? City Lord Lan began, but before he could finish, over a dozen pillars of white light, each as thick as a water tank, surged into the air. The moment they emerged, they shifted direction and shot toward the nearby humans and demons at astonishing speed. This sudden attack caught everyone off guard. Powerful figures like City Lord Lan and the young woman immediately used secret techniques to escape. The three identical youths also activated a mysterious method, vanishing without a trace just before the pillars struck. No one had time to deploy defensive measures. Shock and anger spread through the crowd. Before they could comprehend the situation, 5 pillars of yellow light suddenly erupted from the ground around the pond, their surfaces engraved with intricate, indecipherable patterns. Although the human side had more nascent soul cultivators, they also suffered the heaviest losses. Most of the fallen were City Lord Lan's trusted subordinates and disciples. His expression darkened with fury as he roared, "Who dares to ambush us?" He immediately placed a hand on his head, and 5 small blue swords shot forth, expanding into massive blades dozens of feet long. "Slash," he commanded coldly. The giant swords streaked through the air, circling the bases of the yellow pillars. A series of loud explosions followed, yet the pillars remained intact, marked only by shallow sword impressions. City Lord Lan's pupils contracted. He quickly formed a hand seal recalling the swords. At that moment, a green viscous substance seeped from the indentations, releasing a strange pungent odor. The swords hovered above his head as he prepared for further attacks. He knew the power of his flying swords well. They could normally cleave through small mountains with ease. Yet these pillars were different. Their surfaces seemed slightly flexible, almost as if they were alive. The young woman also looked surprised at the failed attack. A low buzzing sound began to rise from the pond, as though something had awakened. The 5 yellow pillars became motionless, but a massive sphere of light, nearly 100 feet in diameter, shot out from the pond. The sphere was entirely white, with a golden object at its center, roughly the size of a human head. "That's the setting sun crystal," Tao To exclaimed, but immediately regretted revealing the name. Without hesitation, he transformed into a streak of white light and rushed toward it. At the mention of the setting sun crystal, the young woman and the 3 identical youths reacted instantly. The young woman cried out, transforming into a black flaming phoenix as she surged forward. The 3 youths combined into a silver beam of light, pursuing closely. However, City Lord Lan remained still, making no move. Hanley also continued observing from above. His objective was clear the divine blood. Unless something surpassed its value, he would not expose himself. Tao To reached the crystal first and attempted to seize it. At that instant, an unexpected change occurred. A powerful, invisible suction force appeared around the sphere, causing Tutuo to falter mid-air. Startled, he immediately circulated his magic power to resist. But silver runes suddenly appeared on his robes, and in the next moment he was dragged into the pond and vanished. The sphere of light remained suspended, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. The young woman and the 3 youths were shocked, and immediately retreated, their gazes fixed on the pond. City Lord Lan's expression grew grim, as if he had realized something. Another thunderous boom erupted from the pond, followed by 5 more yellow pillars identical to the first. A roar like rolling thunder echoed from below, growing louder and louder. The pond and all 10 pillars began to shake violently. Without warning, City Lord Lan turned and fled toward the valley entrance as a streak of blue light, disappearing into the mist within moments. This sudden retreat surprised everyone. Hanley frowned slightly and ascended higher. Meanwhile, the young woman and the 3 identical youths exchanged glances. Though their expressions had grown serious, none chose to leave. Soon after, the water in the pond spun rapidly, forming a massive vortex. At the same time, the 10 yellow pillars extended upward, growing over 100 feet taller. The ground cracked apart as two enormous creatures emerged from either side of the pond. As Han Li continued to rise, he glanced downward and was immediately stunned by what he saw. He discovered that the colossal pillars that had risen on both sides of the pond were nothing more than the fingers of two enormous hands belonging to the gargantuan beings that had just emerged. At this moment, a pair of those massive hands was slowly extending upward from beneath the earth. The water within the scorching light pond had somehow vanished completely. In its place at the center of the dried basin, a giant eyeball roughly 20 feet in diameter appeared. The eyeball rotated slowly, emitting a cold and sinister light. Han Li felt a chill run through his body upon witnessing this sight. His expression changed immediately as he recalled a highly renowned race within the spirit realm. Without the slightest hesitation, he accelerated upward, flying into the air. However, due to the limitations of his incomplete high-zenith invisibility talisman, his speed remained restricted. The young woman and the three identical young men had yet to notice what was happening below, but all of them felt an inexplicable sense of danger. The young woman let out a cold snort and opened her mouth, expelling a crimson handkerchief. At the same time, she raised one hand, summoning an azure worm of light approximately 10 feet long that circled around her body. It was an extremely refined azure flying saber. The handkerchief rose above her head and transformed into a red barrier of light enveloping her body. Meanwhile, the three young men formed hand seals simultaneously. A faint silver light emanated from each of them, and the three lights merged into a single sphere, covering all three within. After these defensive measures were completed, the four demonic cultivators immediately saw the ground below, within a radius of nearly 10,000 feet, split apart with a deafening explosion. The massive eyeball at the bottom of the pond blinked once. Immediately afterward, the setting sun crystal suspended in mid-air descended rapidly and disappeared into the eye. A colossal figure then slowly sat up from within the ground. From his position in the air, Han Li observed everything clearly. The creature stood several thousand feet tall. Its body was largely covered in grayish-yellow soil, and it raised both arms upward. It was an unimaginably massive living being. If Han Li had not previously encountered demon spirits such as the Rahu and the heaven-roaming Kunpeng in the human world, he would have found it difficult to accept that such a being could exist. The giant wore only a loincloth made from the hide of an unknown beast, and on its head was a single enormous eye. That eye was slightly sunken into its face, and it was precisely the depression formed by this eye that had created the pond. Aside from that, the giant possessed a grotesque nose and a long mouth that stretched nearly from ear to ear. When it opened its mouth, rows of sharp white teeth were visible. The giant had not fully stood up. Only its upper body had risen, while its lower half remained buried deep within the ground. Its single eye showed no emotion as it looked at the four demonic cultivators in the air. Impossible. This is a primordial giant. Run. We cannot deal with this, the young woman cried out as soon as she recognized it. Only now did she understand why City Lord Lan had fled without hesitation, even abandoning Tutuo. He must have already recognized the signs and chosen to escape. Without any delay, she formed a hand seal. The red barrier around her body spun rapidly before shattering into fragments of red light. Her figure then vanished abruptly. A moment later, she reappeared several hundred feet away in a flash of red light. The three young men were equally stunned. Only after seeing her escape did they regain their senses and attempt to use a movement technique to flee. However, at that exact moment, the Cyclops giant suddenly opened its mouth. A strange sound came from its throat, followed by an overwhelming suction force. The three young men felt their bodies being pulled toward the giant's mouth. They immediately formed hand seals, struggling with all their strength to resist. Unfortunately, this was a terrifying existence that even deity transformation cultivators had to avoid. Three nascent soul cultivators had no chance of resisting. They were forcibly dragged toward the giant's cavernous mouth, and only then did true fear appear on their faces. One of the young men transformed into a massive silver wolf several dozen feet in length. The wolf let out a desperate howl. The other two young men turned into streaks of silver light and entered its body. At once, azure and red light appeared on either side of the wolf's head, forming two additional wolf heads. The three heads howled together. Silver, red, and azure light erupted from their mouths, merging into the protective silver barrier around them. Although they could not completely stop their movement, their speed was significantly reduced. Facing imminent danger, the three demonic cultivators had merged once more into their Cerberus wolf form. Han Li's heart stirred slightly as he observed this. A graceful figure appeared briefly in his mind, but he quickly suppressed the thought and refocused on the situation below. Since the pond had been formed by the giant's eye, it was highly likely that the spirit tribe traitor had already been devoured. Furthermore, based on his knowledge, primordial giants possessed extremely low intelligence and devoured beings indiscriminately. They would not distinguish something like divine blood. Therefore, the vial containing the divine blood was most likely inside the giant's body. This made the situation extremely troublesome. Although primordial giants lacked intelligence, once fully grown, they possessed strength comparable to early spatial tempering cultivators. With their natural talents, they could even contend with body integration stage beings. There were even legends of thousand-eyed giants capable of rivaling true heavenly spirits, such as dragons and phoenixes. Han Li felt conflicted, yet unwilling to abandon this opportunity. At that moment, the three heads of the Cerberus wolf released several treasures in an attempt to break free. However, as soon as the treasures appeared, they were drawn into the giant's mouth by swirling silver runes, rendering them useless. The Cerberus wolf could only resist by expending its own magic power, yet it continued to be slowly pulled forward. Despite releasing powerful three-colored light, it could not escape the suction. The giant appeared impatient. It raised one enormous hand and swung it toward the wolf as if swatting an insect. A vast shadow descended, covering the demonic wolf. Even before the hand made contact, the force of the wind caused the protective barriers around the wolf to tremble violently on the verge of collapse. If struck, the wolf would be crushed instantly. Yet it could not move, completely restrained by the suction force. Despair filled the eyes of all three wolf heads. Just as the giant hand was about to strike, a sudden change occurred. A flash of yellow light appeared beside the wolf. A thin figure emerged and immediately punched forward. It was Huan Tianqi. One fist struck toward the giant's palm, while the other aimed at the Cerberus wolf. Brilliant spiritual light burst from his fists, forming two spheres of yellow light. With a loud explosion, one sphere collided with the giant's palm, only slightly slowing it before being destroyed. The other struck the wolf's barrier, launching it away like an arrow and freeing it from the suction. At the same time, the giant's hand slammed down, but Huan Tianqi vanished with a slight sway. He reappeared several hundred feet away, directly in front of the wolf, and pointed lightly. Countless specks of azure light gathered, forming a massive smooth mirror in an instant. The wolf crashed into the mirror. Ripples spread across its surface before the wolf was gently rebounded. Shaking its head to clear its dizziness, the wolf hurriedly spoke. "Thank you for saving me, Senior Huan. If you're unharmed, leave immediately. This is beyond your ability to handle. I didn't expect a primordial giant here. It must have been dormant in this valley before the three human regions were established. Otherwise, it could not have entered unnoticed." At that moment, a flash of white light appeared nearby. A man in white robes emerged with his hands behind his back. It was Spirit Lord Huang Liang. He stared at the giant with narrowed eyes and a serious expression. Humph, that must be the case. Otherwise, the guards at the entrances would not have overlooked such a creature. Fortunately, it is only a Cyclops giant, and it must have been severely injured to remain dormant. If we cooperate, we should be able to kill it, Huan Tianqi said. How shall we divide the spoils? I have heard this giant possesses a large piece of setting sun crystal. It is an excellent material for refining yang attribute spirit treasures, Huang Liang asked thoughtfully. Huan Tianqi responded without hesitation, I have no interest in what the spirit tribe traitor carried. I will take the setting sun crystal. Agreed. Remain vigilant. Although the spirit tribe cultivators have retreated, they may return, Huang Liang said, turning towards several figures appearing in the distance. Han Li also looked in that direction. He saw City Lord Lan and the demonic young woman returning accompanied by several humans and demons. There was no sign of any spirit tribe cultivators. During the earlier clash outside the valley, profound spirit, Shu Tian had believed that his strength alone would be sufficient to contend with both Spirit Lord Huang Liang and Huan Tianqi. Yet the outcome had exceeded his expectations. The cultivation arts employed by the two complemented one another seamlessly, amplifying their combined power far beyond what Shu Tian had anticipated. As the battle progressed, Shu Tian quickly realized that victory was impossible. He chose not to prolong the confrontation and instead withdrew decisively with the remaining Spirit Tribe members. Otherwise, Huan Tianqi and Spirit Lord Huang Liang would not have been able to enter the valley so swiftly. At this moment, the gathering of so many individuals seemed to stir some buried memory within the Cyclops giant. A savage light surfaced in its eye as it released a deafening roar. It lowered its head, and a sharp radiance burst forth from its single eye. Instantly, countless white strands surged outward in a chaotic torrent, enveloping both Huan Tianqi and Spirit Lord Huang Liang. I did not expect it to have fully refined the setting sun crystal already. Still, if it believes such simple fire strands can harm us, it is mistaken, Spirit Lord Huang Liang said coldly. With a flick of his sleeve, the yin-yang mirror appeared once more, expanding rapidly to the size of a grown man and positioning itself before him as a shield. The white strands struck the mirror and brilliant spiritual light erupted from its surface, reflecting all the incoming attacks back toward the giant. Yet the strands vanished into the giant's body without causing any damage. On the other side, Huan Tianqi also summoned a massive mirror using his spiritual power, deflecting the white strands in the same manner. Seeing that its attack had no effect, the giant ceased firing from its eye and emitted a low growl. It spread the fingers of one enormous hand and swung it toward the two opponents with overwhelming force. Even before the palm reached them, violent winds surged forward. Spirit Lord Huang Liang's expression darkened. He expelled a white paper fan from his mouth, caught it, and waved it forcefully toward the incoming strike. A gust of white wind materialized out of thin air, colliding with the gale produced by the giant's palm and holding it back. Meanwhile, Huan Tianqi rubbed his hands together, generating a strand of gray lightning. The lightning shifted and condensed, forming an unremarkable silver saber. Though the blade appeared sharp, it lacked any imposing aura. At the same time, Huan Tianqi began chanting. Yellow fur sprouted across his youthful face, and his eyes turned a cold green. With a deep roar, immense spiritual pressure erupted from his body. He swung the saber lightly, and a gray line shot forward. The line extended rapidly to over 10 feet in length and struck the giant's thumb in an instant. Its sharpness was extreme. The giant had no time to react before its thumb was severed cleanly. It howled in pain and withdrew its hand reflexively. Its single eye bulged bloodshot with fury and agony as it fixed a hostile gaze on Huan Tianqi. After releasing that strike, the grey blade vanished and Huan Tianqi's complexion paled, indicating the heavy energy cost. Spirit Lord Huang Liang observed the giant's enraged eye and said in a measured tone, "Be cautious, fellow Taoist Huan. That strike has clearly angered it. Its next attack will likely be difficult to handle. I wonder about its regenerative ability. If it can restore that thumb immediately, the situation will become unfavorable." "I am aware," Huan Tianqi replied calmly. "That strike was only a test. Since its finger was severed so easily, it appears to be nothing more than an ordinary giant. There is no cause for concern." However, before he finished speaking, a layer of green light appeared over the wound. Flesh and bone regenerated rapidly, forming a new thumb identical to the original in an instant. The giant flexed the thumb, which functioned as before. Huan Tianqi's earlier attack had been rendered meaningless. Huan Tianqi hesitated briefly, then drew a sharp breath. An immortal body-spirit lord Huang Liang said, his pupils contracting. At that moment the giant slammed both hands into the ground. The entire chaotic valley trembled violently. Its body doubled in height as it rose to its feet. More troubling was what followed. As it stood, it pulled a black stone club from the ground. The club was enormous, nearly half its height. Faint azure light shimmered across its surface, revealing it to be forged from azure spirit sand. This rare material possessed a density exceeding even refined iron. A direct strike from such a weapon would be difficult for even mid-spatial tempering cultivators to withstand. It wields a weapon as well. This is becoming troublesome. We must use our full strength. Spirit Lord Huang Liang said, his expression tightening. I understand. We will eliminate it together. It cannot be allowed to live, Huan Tianqi replied without emotion. He opened his mouth and released a low cry. A flash of iridescent light appeared in the sky, revealing a fist-sized moth, his spirit insect. The mature illusionary flame moth. The moth flapped its wings, and its body expanded rapidly within the shimmering light, reaching 10 feet in size. At the same time, thick yellow fur grew across Huan Tianqi's body, and his features took on beastly characteristics. In an instant, he transformed into a half-human, half-demon form. Spirit Lord Huang Liang sat cross-legged and placed a hand atop his head. A burst of yellow light emerged, carrying a nascent soul about half a foot tall. The nascent soul resembled him, exactly clad in silver armor and holding a green sword and a white jade seal. Unlike ordinary nascent souls, it appeared solid and tangible. It opened its eyes and hurled the jade seal into the air. The seal expanded to the size of an acre and descended toward the giant's head. Meanwhile, Huan Tianqi moved forward as a streak of light slashing with his claws. Numerous translucent claw projections appeared, tearing through space as they advanced. His body merged into these projections and vanished. The giant roared in fury. Crimson beams shot from its eye as it swung its stone club toward the descending seal. With its other hand, it scooped up a mass of earth. The soil transformed into a massive boulder, which it hurled toward Spirit Lord Huang Liang. The claw projections collided with the crimson beams, triggering a series of explosions. At the same time, the stone club struck the seal with a thunderous impact. The battle had fully begun. From above, Han Li watched with a serious expression. This was a confrontation between spatial tempering cultivators and a primordial giant. Even their simplest movements caused the surrounding origin qi to fluctuate violently. Spirit Lord Huang Liang's nascent soul controlled the seal, which continuously absorbed surrounding spiritual qi, greatly enhancing its power. Without this, it could not have withstood repeated blows from the stone club. Huan Tianqi merged with his claw projections, resembled a vortex constantly drawing in spiritual qi. As for the giant, each breath absorbed vast quantities of spiritual qi, far more than either cultivator, though its purity was lower. This was Han Li's first time witnessing such a battle at close range. He carefully observed every detail, gaining insights beneficial to his own cultivation. The experience was highly rewarding. As he watched intently, his expression shifted. He turned toward a certain location. Nothing was visible, and his spiritual sense detected nothing. Yet his spirit eyes refined by bright sight. Spirit water perceived a faint, transparent figure hovering in mid-air. Also observing the battle, Xu Tian Hanli thought, only that profound spirit could conceal himself so effectively. He felt a trace of satisfaction. The more complex the situation became, the more advantageous it was for him. As he observed the figure, it suddenly raised its head and glanced in his direction. Hanli's heart stirred. Fortunately, the figure lowered its head again. It was unclear whether Xu Tian had noticed him or merely glanced unintentionally. Hanli narrowed his eyes, uncertain. The battle below continued for half a day. The chaotic valley was reduced to ruin, its terrain covered in craters. The grey mist had long been dispersed by overwhelming spiritual pressure. The fluctuations in origin, qi caused extreme weather changes. Dark clouds, heavy rain, blazing sunlight, and even storms of wind, snow, hail, mud, and stone. Only a few, including the young woman in palatial robes and several deity transformation cultivators, remained at a distance. Others had fled to avoid being caught in the aftermath. The Cyclops giant remained fierce, seemingly tireless. However, Han Li noticed that Spirit Lord Huang Liang and Huan Tianqi were deliberately employing a strategy to exhaust it. Despite its absorption of origin, Qi the giant's movement slowed. Its defeat was only a matter of time. Eventually, as Spirit Lord Huang Liang distracted it, Huan Tianqi seized the opportunity and severed one of its toes. The giant roared in anger, but this time the severed toe did not regenerate. Both cultivators' eyes lit up. They understood that the battle was finally nearing its end. Brilliant yellow light radiated from Spirit Lord Huang Liang's nascent soul, and the small green sword in its hand shot forward without warning. A flash of green light followed, and the small sword transformed into a strange spirit beast. It had the head of a falcon, the body of a horse, and a pair of azure-feathered wings. The beast opened its mouth, then lunged at the giant with fierce momentum. At the same time, the nascent soul raised a finger and pointed toward the massive white seal hovering in the sky. The seal immediately began to spin at high speed, turning into a hazy white projection under the nascent soul's control. In an instant, countless rays of multicolored light converged upon the seal, causing its already immense size to grow even further. Within a few breaths, it had expanded several times, over nearly covering the entire sky. Meanwhile, Huan Tianqi halted several hundred feet away from the giant. He lifted both hands, and two spheres of grey lightning emerged amid rolling thunder. A massive grey blade several dozen feet long appeared abruptly. Though it looked unremarkable, the power it contained was vastly greater than the blade Huan Tianqi had used earlier. Huan Tianqi stared coldly at the giant, then waved a hand toward the massive moth that had been hovering above him. The moth immediately spread its wings and transformed into a streak of iridescent light, which vanished into the giant blade in an instant. A cold and sinister aura began to emanate from the blade. Without haste, Huan Tianqi swung it toward the giant's waist. A thin, dazzling line shot out in a flash. Though the giant lacked intelligence, it could still sense the deadly threat posed by the two attacks from Spirit Lord Huang Liang and Huan Tianqi. It threw its head back and let out a thunderous roar. White light flashed from its single eye, and a gleaming white sphere shot forth, forming a ball of light that held the azure-winged spirit beast at bay. Immediately afterward, crimson light flared. A surge of intense radiance burst from its eye and collided directly with the incoming thin line. A strange scene unfolded. When the thin line met the crimson light, there was no explosion. The collision was completely silent, and the two forces became locked in a tense stalemate. As for the massive white seal descending from above, the giant reacted by summoning a projection resembling a small mountain around the stone club in its hand. It hurled the club directly toward Spirit Lord Huang Liang. At the same time, it clenched its hands into enormous fists. Veins like coiled serpents bulged beneath its skin as it struck upward toward the seal with brutal force. It intended to resist the enormous seal with nothing but its raw strength. A deafening explosion followed. Blinding light erupted from the seal, forcing even Han Li, who was observing from above, to close his eyes. A terrifying wave of energy surged outward, causing the surrounding air to churn violently and nearly sweeping him away. Han Li's heart trembled. He immediately circulated his magic power to steady himself. When he opened his eyes again and looked downward, he was stunned. A dense yellow cloud had formed beneath him, completely concealing the three combatants. Han Li hesitated briefly, then released his spiritual sense into the cloud. From within, he could hear the enraged roars of the Cyclops giant mixed with Huan Tianqi's manic laughter. Explosions rang out intermittently, and the cloud itself churned violently. Spirit Lord Huang Liang remained silent throughout. He was likely focused on executing a critical technique, or perhaps he simply saw no need to speak, believing the outcome was already decided. Han Li's gaze shifted toward the distant, transparent shadow, only to find that it had vanished. A thoughtful expression appeared in his eyes as he turned his attention back to the yellow cloud below. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream erupted from within the cloud, followed by a heavy impact that shook the entire valley, as if something massive had collapsed. All sounds ceased at once. A strange look flickered across Han Li's face. He formed a hand seal and slowly descended. At that moment, Huan Tianqi's triumphant laughter echoed from within the cloud. It's fortunate that this creature lacked intelligence. Otherwise, we wouldn't have finished it so quickly. That spirit tribe traitor must have been devoured by it. I'll cut it open and see what he was carrying. I'll leave that to you, Brother Huan. I've already sealed the setting sun crystal. I'll hand it over shortly, Spirit Lord Huang Liang replied. The yellow cloud gradually dissipated, revealing the scene below. The Cyclops giant lay on the ground, its body riddled with wounds, surrounded by a river of green blood. One arm and one leg lay nearby, severed cleanly. Its massive head had been crushed with less than half remaining. At the center of its chest was a huge hole, its edges charred black. It appeared to have been struck by a Yang-attributed treasure which had destroyed its heart instantly. That had been the fatal blow. Huan Tianqi had already returned to his human form. Aside from a slightly pale complexion, he showed no signs of injury. He was currently controlling a white flying saber, slicing open the giant's abdomen. Nearby, Spirit Lord Huang Liang held a white crystal ball, examining it with a faint smile. The crystal ball was the setting sun crystal from within the giant's body. However, it had been significantly reduced in size by some unknown technique. When we last entered the primordial world, we killed a two-eyed giant. That one was far more difficult to deal with. Direct confrontations with primordial giants should be avoided whenever possible. Despite their size, they yield nothing of value. Killing one consumes a great deal of energy, yet offers no benefit, Huan Tianqi said, as he continued cutting. Normally that is true. We would not provoke giants without reason. However, it is not entirely accurate to say they yield nothing. I recall that divine wolf Celestial Kui of the 7 demon monarchs once killed a 7-headed giant and obtained a fragment of Myriad Dawn soil. With it, he refined the Myriad Dawn demon tower and secured his position among the demon monarchs. Spirit Lord Huang Liang replied calmly, "That's true. Primordial giants consume almost anything so valuable. Items can sometimes be found within them. However, the odds are too low. Who would risk fighting a giant just for such uncertainty, especially since they usually live in groups? Have you forgotten how we nearly had to flee into the ocean after killing that two-eyed giant? When the 3-headed giant came after us," Huan Tianqi said with a wry smile. Spirit Lord Huang Liang chuckled softly, but said nothing further. As Huan Tianqi cut deeper into the giant's body, a pile of objects suddenly spilled out. Most of them were dull and lifeless. Only a blue jade bowl and a translucent red vial continued to emit spiritual light. The jade bowl emitted a faint blue glow that protected the vial within. "This should be it," Huan Tianqi said, immediately recognizing the jade bowl as the true form of an artifact spirit tribe being. Its spiritual aura had already faded, indicating that the being had perished. The spirit tribe traitor had clearly sacrificed himself to protect the vial. That object was likely what they had been seeking. A pleased expression appeared on Huan Tianqi's face. However, just as he reached out for the vial, Spirit Lord Huang Liang's expression changed drastically. "Look out," he shouted. Huan Tianqi reacted almost at the same moment. He sensed a well-hidden attack aimed at him from the shadows. With no time to think, he stomped hard against the ground and launched himself upward. A streak of crimson light swept past where his feet had been. A small humanoid figure only about a foot tall appeared nearby and reached toward the vial. "Don't you dare!" Spirit Lord Huang Liang roared, flicking his fingers rapidly. Dozens of yellow sword chi streaks shot forward, but they were too late. The small figure laughed and seized the vial. Its body flickered, transforming into a crimson cloud as it attempted to escape. "Xu Tian, you won't escape." Huan Tianqi roared, recognizing the attacker after narrowly avoiding death. Spatial fluctuations appeared above the crimson cloud. A massive moth about 10 feet in size materialized at his command. Its green eyes flashed as it beat its wings without hesitation. A dense, seven-colored mist descended toward the cloud. The crimson cloud avoided the mist, clearly wary of it, and changed direction to evade. However, that brief delay was enough. Spirit Lord Huang Liang's sword, Qi, had already arrived, and he himself charged forward as a streak of yellow light. Shu Tian's heart sank. At that moment, a familiar voice sounded in his ear. "Master Shu Tian, give the divine blood to me. I'm using a concealment technique. I can take it out of here." Shu Tian hesitated briefly, then felt a surge of relief. The one observing with him from above was indeed Xian. Shu Tian possessed an ability to faintly sense nearby kin, but he had not been certain of the presence or identity of the person. Now all doubts were resolved. He raised one hand to block the incoming sword Qi. At the same time, the small vial appeared in his other hand in a flash of light. With a flick of his wrist, the crimson vial shot toward the direction of the voice. The cloud of blood churned violently, then rapidly condensed into a blood lotus that revolved around its body. More than 10 streaks of swordlight were drawn into it and vanished without a trace. The small vial shot over 30 meters away and disappeared into empty space in the blink of an eye. When Huan Tianqi arrived and witnessed this scene, he roared in fury, expelling a surge of grey demonic wind. Hail, sand and stones swept across the area where Han Li was concealed. Although the demon could not see Han Li directly, his combat experience was extensive. He quickly deduced that a human using concealment techniques had taken the bottle. Han Li's expression shifted slightly when he saw the demonic wind sweeping toward him. While concealed, he could not immediately escape the range of the attack. If the wind brushed against him, his invisibility talisman would be dispelled at once. At that critical moment, Shu Tian's expression darkened. He formed an incantation gesture and pointed toward the raging wind. A streak of red swordlight tore across the horizon and flew into his hand. With a flash, it cut through the demonic wind and struck directly at Huan Tianqi. Startled, Huan Tianqi raised his hand without hesitation. A grey demonic claw appeared, instantly slashing toward the incoming crimson light. The grey and red radiance intertwined, entering a temporary stalemate. Seeing this, Han Li felt a surge of relief and began to retreat while remaining concealed. However, a cold snort sounded behind him. "Where do you think you're going?" Han Li sensed a fluctuation within the yellow mist. A white jade seal appeared above his head in a distorted blur, expanding to over 30 meters in size before crashing downward. The attack was executed with extreme speed. Shu Tian shouted, but it was already too late for him to intervene. Han Li had already seen the seal's power before. When it struck, it remained completely unharmed. He could not afford to take the blow. His expression flickered several times before he let out a quiet sigh. As the jade seal descended, silver light flashed, revealing Han Li's figure. He struck the top of his head, summoning a small cauldron enveloped in azure light. Opening it, he released a series of clear cries, followed by countless azure threads. These threads quickly wove together into a net of light, rising to intercept the falling seal. The jade seal continued its descent, colliding directly with the net. A chain of explosions erupted. The seal remained intact, while the azure net began to fracture. However, the heaven-void cauldron was a divine spirit treasure. With another surge of azure threads, it finally halted the seal's downward force. Seizing the opportunity, Han Li formed an incantation gesture. Thunder rang out, and a pair of azure white wings appeared on his back. His body twisted, transforming into a streak of white light that vanished along with the small cauldron. When the jade seal broke free from the net, it struck nothing. At that moment, azure lightning flickered over 100 meters away as Han Li silently reappeared. "How are you able to control that treasure? You are not Siyan." Shu Tian's incredulous voice emerged from within the blood cloud. The cloud churned, revealing a small silhouette only several inches tall. The profound spirit, Shu Tian, stared at Han Li with alarm and anger. "You are not from the spirit race. You are a human cultivator. A flash of light emerged from the yellow mist, revealing Spirit Lord Huang Liang. He looked at Han Li with clear astonishment. Huan Tianqi used this moment to disperse the crimson sword light and moved beside Huang Liang, also examining Han Li with confusion. Facing multiple spatial tempering stage cultivators, Han Li simply opened his mouth, formed an incantation gesture, and expelled a mouthful of blood mist. In an instant, dense blood fog enveloped his body. He's trying to escape. Shu Tian shouted upon seeing this, recognizing the technique. The blood cloud beneath Han Li stirred, ready to surge forward. Han Tianqi snorted. Fellow Taoist Shu Tian, there is no need to rush. I am more interested in your blood fiend Spirit Lotus. As for this human cultivator, fellow Taoist Huang can handle him. His body transformed partially into a demonic form, and in a blur he charged toward Shu Tian. Huang Liang stared at Han Li and spoke calmly. Do not worry. He is merely at the deity transformation stage. Even with a spirit treasure, he will not escape. His gaze briefly swept toward the heaven-void cauldron. As soon as he spoke, he opened his mouth and spat out a small green sword. It blurred and appeared above the blood mist with serpentine agility. A light clang sounded as golden light shot out from the mist. Though repelled slightly, it successfully blocked the green sword. The golden light revealed itself as a 1-foot-long flying sword. Huang Liang sneered and pointed at his weapon. The green streak immediately entangled with the golden sword. As they clashed, the golden light was gradually suppressed. The green streak began to rotate, transforming into a meter-wide wheel that spun with crushing force. Sharp metallic sounds rang continuously. Strangely, despite the fierce assault, the golden sword remained largely intact, though its glow dimmed. It continued to engage the green sword, deliberately restraining it. Huang Liang let out a soft exclamation, his expression shifting slightly. Although the green sword was not forged from extraordinary materials, it had been refined over several thousand years. Its power rivaled that of a spirit treasure. Yet now it was being resisted by a flying sword wielded by a deity transformation cultivator. He was deeply surprised, though he maintained a composed exterior. Forming another incantation gesture, he caused the sword to ring sharply. It split into 36 identical copies, which launched a dense barrage toward the blood mist, aiming to pierce Han Li. However, Han Li's back blurred and dozens of small golden swords appeared. They shot forward in streaks, intercepting every incoming attack without exception. Meanwhile, the blood mist grew increasingly unstable as Han Li continued chanting. His 10 fingers moved rapidly through incantation gestures, nearing completion of his technique. Huang Liang's surprise became evident, but a cold light soon flashed in his eyes. The surrounding yellow mist brightened, and he vanished. Han Li let out a low breath. Crimson markings appeared on his forehead, followed by the emergence of a black eye. It emitted a thin beam of jet-black light before disappearing. 30 meters away, a loud explosion echoed. Yellow mist and black light collided, revealing Huang Liang. You possess such a treasure, an annihilation-type treasure. Huang Liang's expression turned grim. After the initial shock, his face showed neither anger nor joy. He raised his hand slowly. Space above Han Li distorted violently. Winds surged and strands of mist gathered, condensing into a sphere of light. In the blink of an eye, a 3-meter-long crystalline jade axe materialized. Huang Liang clenched his fist and brought it down. Cleave! The jade axe trembled and began descending. Even before it reached its target, thunder echoed. Azure lightning burst from the axe, warping the surrounding space. Its true power far exceeded its appearance. Within the blood mist, Han Li's expression changed. Without hesitation, he spat out a small black mountain. It trembled, releasing rings of grey light. Wherever these halos passed, the azure sword lights wailed and trembled as if suppressed. However, the jade axe was far more formidable. It brushed aside the halos with ease. Han Li's heart tightened. The small mountain suddenly erupted, condensing over a dozen halos into a dense ring of light. It vanished briefly, then reappeared near the jade axe, wrapping around it tightly. The axe's rainbow glow flickered in resistance, but its movement suddenly halted. Huang Liang was visibly shocked. Without delay, he shouted and released a series of spell seals. Thunder roared as the axe unleashed violent bursts of azure lightning, tearing through the grey halo. But the brief delay was enough. Han Li's figure blurred into a crimson streak, leaving the blood mist. At an inconceivable speed, he traveled hundreds of kilometers away, becoming a faint black speck on the horizon. His flying swords and the small black mountain vanished as well. With his deity transformation, cultivation, and powerful physique, this escape technique achieved astonishing speed. In only a few flashes, he disappeared completely. At that moment, Huang Liang and the others stopped fighting and stared into the distance in shock. Almost simultaneously, the three reacted. They formed incantation gestures and shot forward in furious pursuit. Moments later, the sky fell silent and empty as the three chased at speeds nearly rivaling the Blood Shadow evasion. With the speed of Blood Shadow evasion, Han Li reached the valley entrance within a few breaths. At his current level of cultivation, he could finally accomplish what had been impossible during the core formation and nascent soul stages. Even at such overwhelming speed, he was now able to maintain precise control over his direction. In an instant, he had already traveled over 50 kilometers. His spiritual sense swept across the surrounding area. He soon discovered that Huang Liang and the others were not far behind and were still pursuing closely. His heart sank slightly. All of them were spatial tempering stage cultivators. Han Li did not expect escaping them to be simple. Still enveloped in crimson light, he flipped his hand, producing 2 pearls engraved with crimson-black talisman patterns. Without hesitation, he threw them behind him and began forming incantation gestures. At the same time, his body continued to streak forward as a crimson blur, passing through the entrance of Chaotic Valley. Behind him, the 3 cultivators remained in pursuit. The 2 pearls spun in the air and emitted a low hum before erupting in a deafening explosion. Black and red light expanded outward, forming 2 blazing suns, each over 30 meters wide. Violent waves of qi spread outward like a storm, engulfing an area spanning several kilometers. Among the 3 pursuing cultivators, Shu Tian had the deepest cultivation. He had even activated a secret technique to increase his speed, causing him to be caught directly within the storm. The other 2 reacted more quickly, immediately altering their paths to avoid the dangerous area. However, neither the human nor the demon intended to waste this opportunity to strike Shu Tian. Huan Tianqi's sleeve trembled as a grey demonic wind surged forth. Huang Liang waved his hand, releasing a beam of yellow light into the storm. Both attacks entered the chaotic qi and detonated with a loud explosion. Immediately afterward, Shu Tian's furious roar echoed out. Seeing that Shu Tian had been injured and would be occupied for some time, the 2 exchanged a brief glance and smiled before heading toward the valley entrance. By now, Han Li had already become a distant blur at the horizon. Neither of them paid much attention to the distance. With their secret techniques, they were confident they could catch up. But at that moment, cracks suddenly opened along the stone walls of the valley. Silver light flashed, and 2 pillars of silver flame surged forward to engulf them. Within the narrow valley, the flames traveled at astonishing speed, arriving before them in an instant. Spirit Lord Huang Liang did not hesitate. He swung his hand, sending a streak of yellow swordlight slashing toward the flames. However, the moment the swordlight touched the silver flame, it was completely devoured. The flames did not slow. Instead, they surged forward with even greater force, their intense heat drying the air itself. Huang Liang's expression changed drastically. Spirit extinguishing bone flame. He shouted. Immediately afterward, he formed an incantation with his hands and vanished from his original position, just as the pillar of flame swept through it. Han Tianqi faced a similar situation. He released a demonic wind, but it was instantly consumed by the silver flames. His expression shifted slightly as he flickered repeatedly, leaving behind afterimages to evade the attack. After regaining some distance, Huan Tianqi looked toward Huang Liang, his expression somewhat unsightly. "No, this is not spirit-extinguishing bone flame," he said in a low voice. "Although white bone flame can appear silver, it carries dense evil qi. Only ancestor white bone can control it." The two pillars of flame then converged at the center, forming a fireball roughly 3 meters wide. The fireball rapidly shrank, revealing a graceful silver flame bird. A fire spirit, both of them said, visibly surprised. The silver flame bird stared at them coldly. With a light flap of its wings, silver light flickered, and countless fist-sized fireballs appeared in the surrounding space. A clear, ringing sound echoed as the fireballs trembled, then surged forward, forming a dense barrage from all directions. After confirming that the flames were not spirit-extinguishing bone flame, Huang Liang felt a slight sense of relief. Seeing the incoming fireballs, he let out a cold snort and waved his hand, causing an 8-trigram mirror to expand rapidly before him. Beside him, Huan Tianqi flipped his hand, producing a sphere of silver lightning. Although they did not know the exact nature of the silver flames, they did not dare treat them lightly and prepared to respond with full strength. However, just as the fireballs were about to strike, they suddenly brightened, trembled, and then vanished without warning. At the same time, the intense heat in the surrounding area disappeared entirely. Huang Liang narrowed his eyes and focused on the silver flame bird. A soft sound rang out. The flame bird abruptly combusted on its own, scattering like the fireballs before disappearing without a trace. With a darkened expression, Huang Liang turned to look at Huan Tianqi. The elder of the Jasper Mouse clan wore a similarly grim expression. After a brief pause, Huan Tianqi said coldly, "Even if those weren't spirit-extinguishing bone flames, they were still extraordinary. I've never encountered a cultivator like this before." Huang Liang shook his head and glanced toward the valley exit. He let out a cold laugh. "I don't recognize him. Perhaps he's from another region. In any case, this is the first time I've seen him in the Heaven Origin region. For a lone cultivator to escape us with such minor tricks. We've been careless. Although it's too late to mark him with spiritual sense with our strength, we should still be able to locate him in the setting sun tomb, provided he hasn't gone beyond 5,000 kilometers." By now, Han Li had already disappeared beyond the horizon. Huan Tianqi nodded in agreement. The two then closed their eyes and extended their powerful spiritual sense outward. Moments later, both revealed expressions of shock and disbelief. How is this possible? There's no trace of his spiritual power. Not even the slightest residue, Huang Liang said in astonishment. "I can't find anything either," Huan Tianqi muttered. Even if he had died, traces of his aura should remain briefly. Either his cultivation far surpasses ours, or he used a special method to conceal his aura. Huang Liang frowned. It must be the latter. Don't forget, he was already hiding nearby before, and we failed to detect him. He must be highly skilled in concealment techniques. Huan Tianqi's expression stiffened slightly. That makes things troublesome. With such abilities, locating him will be difficult. Not necessarily, Huang Liang replied calmly. Since he's concealed himself, he won't be able to travel far using movement techniques. He should still be within 1,000 kilometers. If we mobilize our subordinates, we can control the entire area. And with your illusion flame moth's 1,000 moth technique, I believe he won't be able to remain hidden forever. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Huan Tianqi hesitated briefly before nodding. The 1,000 moth technique will consume vitality, but there's no better option. It will be worth it. As for the setting sun crystal, his gaze shifted toward the treasure in Huang Liang's hand. Huang Liang smiled faintly. "Once we obtain the item from the spirit clan, I will hand over the crystal. Even if we fail to find him, I'll split it in half." "Good. That will suffice," Huan Tianqi replied. He was about to say more when a long, piercing screech echoed from behind them, followed by a violent eruption that shook the heavens. A powerful wave of spiritual energy spread across the sky. Both of them felt a chill in their hearts and quickly turned around. Not far away, the storm caused by the immortal vanquishing pearls had dissipated. In its place, a 30-meter-wide blood lotus rotated slowly in the air. At its center stood a figure staring at them with a cold and ominous gaze. It was Shu Tian. Han Tianqi showed no fear. He spoke calmly. "Fellow Taoist Shu Tian, do you still intend to fight? The one who deceived you has already escaped. It would be better for us to stop here for now." Shu Tian swept his gaze around but found no trace of Han Li. He then looked at the two and let out a cold snort. "I will let you go for now, but if the opportunity arises in the future, I will test your abilities." The blood lotus beneath him closed its petals. With a sharp cry, it shot through the valley at incredible speed. Before long, it disappeared from sight. Huang Liang and Huan Tianqi did not take Shu Tian's threat seriously. Spirits could not remain long within the domains of humans and demons. Moreover, the two held an advantage when acting together. After a brief discussion, they parted ways. They intended to gather their subordinates and seal off an area spanning over 1,000 kilometers. Not even a single insect would be able to escape. At that moment, Han Li was on a small mountain more than 1,000 kilometers away. His appearance had changed completely. He now looked like a short, middle-aged man with long facial hair. There was not a trace of spiritual qi in his body. He appeared no different from an ordinary body refiner. He sat cross-legged on a boulder, his face calm and expressionless as he meditated. After some time, Han Li slowly opened his eyes. A faint smile appeared on his lips as he muttered, "The last thread of spirit flames within my body has been extinguished. Unless they examine me personally, they won't be able to recognize anything." Even so, he made no move to leave. Although both his appearance and aura had been altered, Han Li had no intention of taking unnecessary risks. He then leapt down from the boulder and moved swiftly, descending the mountain in a few light steps. Not long afterward, he arrived before a cliff covered in dense vines and shrubs. Han Li swept his gaze across the surroundings and nodded slightly, a hint of satisfaction in his expression. Taking a deep breath, he raised his fists, which shone with golden light, and began striking the cliff. Thunderous rumbles echoed as a cave nearly 10 meters deep was quickly formed. His figure blurred and he slipped into the cave in a strange flickering motion. Once inside, he struck upward again, causing a large pile of rubble to collapse and seal the entrance completely. The cave instantly fell into complete darkness. Han Li remained unconcerned. With a flick of his wrist, a prepared moonlight stone appeared in his hand. He tossed it upward and struck it firmly into the ceiling. The stone embedded itself with ease. Under the faint crystalline glow, the interior of the cave became clearly visible. Han Li selected a clean spot and sat down. A flash of light came from his spirit ring as he retrieved a small crimson vial from his storage bracelet. He held it in his hand and examined it with a thoughtful gaze. Aside from a steady red glow, the vial looked entirely ordinary with a smooth porcelain-like surface. As he gently stroked the vial with his finger, he silently reviewed the memories of the spirit Shi Yan regarding divine blood. After a long while, Han Li frowned slightly. He then took out a jade alms bowl about the size of his palm and opened the vial, tilting it over the bowl. A strand of purple light flowed out and a drop of deep purple liquid slowly fell into the bowl. The liquid did not merge with it in any way. Han Li narrowed his eyes and observed it carefully for a long time before extending a finger toward the liquid. The moment he made contact, the purple liquid seemed to spring upward of its own accord, wrapping around his finger as if attempting to enter his body. Han Li raised an eyebrow. Golden light flickered across his flesh, halting the movement of the liquid. With a flick of his finger, he cast it back into the bowl. Not bad. It truly is the spirit tribe's divine blood. A trace of interest appeared in his eyes. He then carefully returned the liquid to the vial and stored it back into his storage bracelet. Only then did he allow himself to relax and remain quietly within the cave. Although he currently possessed no magic power, he had no need for food or water. Before long, a strand of spiritual sense swept past him. Upon sensing that his body contained no spiritual qi, it passed over him without a second thought. Over the following days, strands of spiritual sense repeatedly swept through the area, at times more than a dozen times per day. After half a month, the frequency gradually decreased to only 2 or 3 times a day. 2 months later, a much more powerful spiritual sense passed through, but Han Li remained completely still, hidden within the cave. Half a year passed without any further appearances of spiritual sense. Sensing this change, Han Li felt a measure of relief. Even so, he waited several more months before finally opening his eyes. He broke apart the rubble sealing the entrance and slowly stepped outside. He surveyed the surroundings. Seeing nothing unusual, he waved his sleeve with a faint chuckle and leapt down the mountain like a shooting star. In a short time, his figure vanished into the forested mountains. A year later, in a small city not far from Setting Sun City, a young body refiner with an unfamiliar face entered the city. He quickly purchased a few items and departed just as swiftly. By then, rumors of the missing divine blood had begun to spread. When cultivators and body refiners who had participated in the battle among the three races confirmed the matter, it soon became a widely discussed topic. Many were astonished that a mere deity transformation stage cultivator had managed to seize such a prize from three spatial tempering stage opponents. Unwilling to let the matter rest, Spirit Lord Huang Liang spent several years investigating after returning to the city, focusing entirely on uncovering the identity of that cultivator. In the end, he found nothing. Although the cultivator had displayed several powerful abilities, there was no trace of him, as if he had never existed before that day. 2 more years later, Spirit Lord Huang Liang left Setting Sun City and went to a wilderness area, honoring a prior agreement with Huan Tianqi. By then, interest in the divine blood had long since faded. Several years later, deep within a massive mountain far removed from human civilization, there was a pitch-black chamber where a man sat meditating, golden light faintly shimmering across his body. Beside him lay a small crimson bottle placed flat on the ground as though empty. The man sat cross-legged without moving. If not for the faint rise and fall of his breathing, he would have appeared no different from a statue. For mortals, 100 years would likely mark the end of their lives. But for a cultivator with profound magic power, it was merely a fleeting moment. After 100 years, the silent mountain was disturbed by the arrival of a caravan of wolf-mounted cavalry. They moved slowly through the terrain, escorting several elaborately decorated beast-drawn carriages. Inside one of the carriages were 3 individuals, an elderly man with graying hair, a 7-year-old boy with a composed demeanor, and a frail girl of the same age. The old man's face was covered in wrinkles, yet his body below the neck remained strong and robust, comparable to that of a young man. Only his hands resembled the withered branches of an ancient tree. Most striking were his fingernails. Not only were they several inches long, but they were also extremely sharp. A faint red light flickered across them, giving them a peculiar and unsettling appearance. The boy and girl sitting across from him could not help but stare at his nails with curiosity. The old man made no effort to hide them. He simply looked at the children with a quiet smile. At that moment, the sound of hooves approached the carriage window. A man's voice reported, "Elder Huo the Vanguard has returned. All beasts within a 500-kilometer radius of Cloud Dress Mountain have been eliminated." The old man's expression shifted slightly. He raised a hand and lifted the curtain. "Good, good. With this, my trade route can proceed without issue." Outside stood a middle-aged cavalryman, mounted on a snow-white wolf, facing the carriage with a respectful expression. The old man glanced at him and said gravely, "Are you certain all demon beasts have been eliminated? Those skilled in concealment can easily hide their aura." The cavalryman's expression tightened for a moment, but he quickly replied with confidence, "That should not be possible. In addition to detecting demonic chi, we had several cultivators sweep the mountain with their spiritual sense. There should be no demon beasts remaining." "I see. In that case, there should be no issue. Although those cultivators are only at the core formation stage, the mountain likely doesn't harbor any high-level demon beasts." "Continue forward," the old man said with a nod. Just as he was about to lower the curtain, the sky suddenly changed. A distant, earth-shaking roar echoed through the air, thunder followed, and the sky darkened as fierce winds howled. The transformation of the weather occurred in the blink of an eye before the old man could even close the curtain. This is... The cavalryman looked up, staring at the gathering clouds above the mountain peak. The old man frowned and struck the top of the carriage 3 times. The caravan slowed and came to a halt. Stepping out, the old man raised his gaze toward the peak. Moments later, his expression changed drastically. He stared at the distant summit, astonished. A heavenly tribulation. A cultivator is undergoing tribulation. Strange. This does not resemble a minor or major tribulation. Above the mountain peak, the sky had turned pitch black. Golden and silver lightning flashed within the clouds, accompanied by low, continuous thunder. Fierce white winds swept downward, striking the peak, cutting through trees and splitting rocks. The entire caravan had come to a stop. The cavalrymen stared at the scene in stunned silence. Several individuals from the caravan rose into the air, circled once, and then descended to stand beside the old man. The handsome youth in yellow robes appeared to be the leader of the group. After descending beside the old man, he cupped his hands respectfully and asked Elder Huo, "Can you determine what kind of heavenly tribulation that senior is facing? It does not resemble a minor tribulation. Could it be that a spatial tempering stage senior is concealed within the mountain?" A faint trace of excitement could be heard in his voice. This reaction was only natural. Cultivators at the spatial tempering stage and above were exceedingly rare even within the spirit realm. The old man slowly shook his head and replied, "It is not a greater tribulation. I have witnessed one before. Its lightning was purple and gold, and its power far exceeded what we are seeing now." The yellow-robed youth frowned slightly. "But minor tribulations are not golden either. They should be azure. I have seen several elders of my sect undergo them." The old man's expression grew solemn as he said with some hesitation, "It does appear more severe than an ordinary minor tribulation, yet it cannot be the metamorphosis tribulation of a demon beast. Those only produce silver lightning." Seeing that even Elder Huo could not reach a conclusion, the core formation cultivators all revealed expressions of disappointment. Meanwhile, the winds in the sky grew increasingly violent. A storm began to form, sweeping across a radius of 50 kilometers around the mountain. Thick black clouds pressed downward, creating a suffocating atmosphere. Elder Huo muttered to himself for a moment before ordering the caravan to form a circle. They would remain in place and wait calmly until the tribulation concluded before proceeding. As thunder continued to roll across the sky, the silver-gold lightning suddenly intensified. It surged wildly between the clouds before descending in a dense barrage like a torrential rain. The silver lightning struck the mountain repeatedly, shattering its peak with bursts of dust and stone. Blinding flashes split the summit apart with ease. In contrast, the golden lightning seemed to vanish the moment it touched the mountain. Soon after, a deep rumble emerged from within the mountain itself. The muffled explosions sounded even louder than the thunder above. This strange phenomenon startled Elder Huo and the others. Golden lightning in a heavenly tribulation was unusual, and unlike ordinary lightning, it was not obstructed by the mountain at all. It passed straight through, striking directly at its target. Such a scene was typically only seen with the purple-gold lightning of greater tribulations. Could this be some form of greater tribulation that the old man had never encountered? As doubt arose in their minds, a piercing azure light suddenly shot out from the mountain's center. In a blur, it broke through the rock, revealing a faint human silhouette within. At once, the onlookers understood that the figure within the azure light must be the cultivator undergoing the tribulation. Unbeknownst to them, this individual had deliberately left the mountain. Since the golden lightning could not be blocked, remaining inside offered no advantage. A more open area would allow better maneuverability against the tribulation's force. At that moment, the silver and golden lightning that had been striking the mountain abruptly shifted direction, targeting the azure light instead. A long cry rang out from within the light. Azure radiance flashed above the figure's head as a massive cauldron appeared, its lid opening instantly. Dense strands of azure threads poured out from within, spreading through the air and covering nearly half the sky. The threads absorbed the silver lightning, completely drawing it into the cauldron. However, the golden lightning remained unaffected, passing straight through the threads and continuing toward the figure below. Good, good, good. The figure within the azure light seemed surprised, yet he laughed lightly at the unexpected outcome. He brought his hands together and raised them upward. Thunder roared as two thick bolts of lightning erupted, intertwining before expanding into a vast net above him. In the next instant, the golden lightning from above collided with the lightning net. A series of crackling explosions followed as the forces clashed, then broke apart into countless thin golden arcs that danced through the air. Elder Huo and the others stood stunned. In the spirit realm, many cultivators practiced lightning-based techniques. Yet when ordinary lightning came into contact with tribulation, lightning, it would not resist, it would instead be absorbed and turned against its wielder. However, the cultivator before them not only wielded lightning comparable to tribulation, lightning, but he even dared to use it to oppose it directly. Such boldness was something they had never witnessed. Even so, the silver and golden lightning from the clouds showed no sign of diminishing. Within the time it took to burn an incense stick, the barrage only grew more intense. What had once been lightning as thin as a finger had now thickened to the size of an arm. At this point, the expression of the figure within the azure light changed slightly. The massive cauldron had reached its limit. The number of azure threads diminished, and they could no longer intercept as much silver lightning. As a result, large amounts of silver lightning began to fall upon the golden net, rapidly draining its strength. The core formation cultivators exchanged uneasy glances. The yellow-robed youth muttered, "This cannot be a minor tribulation. Even the tribulation of a peak deity transformation cultivator is not this powerful." Elder Huo suddenly spoke, his voice low. "No, I have heard of this type of tribulation before." "Is that true, Elder Huo?" the youth asked quickly. "Yes, I recall hearing of it long ago. But it has been too many years. I cannot remember the details clearly," the old man said, his brow furrowed in deep thought. After all, he was not a cultivator. At his age, his memory had already begun to decline. The others grew anxious, yet none dared to press him further. Elder Huo was a peak body refiner, whose strength rivaled that of a nascent soul cultivator. At that moment, one of them suddenly shouted, "Not good. That senior may not be able to hold on much longer." Everyone immediately looked up in alarm, and Elder Huo was pulled from his thoughts. The tribulation had changed again. The lightning arcs had transformed into spheres of gold and silver lightning, each the size of a human head. They descended from the heavens like falling blossoms. These spheres were clearly far more powerful than the previous arcs. Under such a dense assault, the cauldron could no longer endure. It emitted a mournful hum before retracting its threads and shrinking to the size of a fist, then returned to the figure's body. It was obvious that the treasure had suffered severe damage. The figure continued to channel golden lightning through his hands, but the net above him was on the verge of collapse. Under the relentless bombardment, the net was gradually torn apart. Just as the observers believed the cultivator was about to fail, the silhouette let out a cold snort. He struck the back of his head, releasing a grey, misty light. Then he opened his mouth and expelled a pitch-black stone no larger than an inch. When the grey mist spread outward to meet the descending lightning spheres, an astonishing scene unfolded. Regardless of their color, the lightning spheres were halted instantly upon contact with the grey light. As though frozen in place by an invisible force, the grey mist seemed capable of only this one function, yet it performed it flawlessly. As more lightning spheres fell, they were effortlessly gathered within the mist. Though the mist spanned only about 100 meters, it quickly became filled to capacity, packed densely with suspended lightning spheres. At that moment, the figure formed a hand seal toward the black stone. It expanded, instantly transforming into a 40-meter-tall mountain. Immediately after, he uttered a deep and obscure incantation. Waves of light rippled across the surface of the pitch-black mountain. Grey rings emerged from it, sweeping across the suspended lightning spheres. A remarkable transformation followed. As the grey rings passed through them, The lightning spheres trembled faintly. At first, nothing seemed to happen. However, the grey mist began to ripple, and those ripples gradually twisted. The lightning spheres soon became unstable. As the distortion intensified, they collided with one another, erupting in violent explosions that scattered countless arcs of lightning. Then the grey rings trembled again. The scattered arcs were drawn under their control and directed uniformly toward the Black Mountain. The figure continued his actions methodically, using the grey mist to break down the lightning spheres, and the mountain to absorb the resulting energy. Though it appeared effortless inwardly, he was filled with frustration. The divine essence-fused light was indeed extraordinary, and the essence-fused mountain allowed him to contend with the tribulation lightning. However, the cost in magic power was immense. This cultivator was none other than Han Li, who had secluded himself within the mountain for over a century. Not only had he fully mastered the Vajra arts, but he had also reformed his nascent soul with the aid of rare spirit medicines. He had never expected that a heavenly tribulation would descend immediately upon the restoration of his nascent soul. Caught completely unprepared, he had no choice but to confront it head-on. After more than a dozen waves of lightning spheres descended in succession, Han Li's magical power had dropped sharply, with most of it already consumed. However, the heavenly tribulation showed no signs of weakening, as if its supply of lightning were endless. Han Li's expression grew pale. Although he possessed numerous abilities, very few of them were effective against a heavenly tribulation. As for the flame bird, he had refined from Shi Yan's heavenly flame. It had already retreated into his nascent soul at the very beginning of the tribulation. The five devils and the weeping soul beast, being sentient creatures, instinctively feared the tribulation and were unable to provide meaningful assistance. The 8 spirit ruler and the 6 divine talismans would have been suitable treasures for this situation, but both had already been destroyed during his passage through the spatial node. At present, he was left with only a handful of countermeasures. All of them were final life-preserving methods he had carefully prepared, yet even so they seemed insufficient. He could not understand how a minor tribulation in the spirit realm could be so formidable. If all such tribulations were this terrifying, how could other deity transformation cultivators survive? He did not believe that every one of them surpassed him in strength. There had to be some method or hidden principle behind surviving such trials. As this thought passed through his mind, he could not help but feel a trace of regret for not having studied minor tribulations more thoroughly in advance. Naturally, Han Li had no way of knowing that what he was currently experiencing far exceeded the scope of a normal minor tribulation. Even with his many extraordinary abilities, along with his 2 top-grade treasures, the Heaven Void Cauldron and the Essence-Fused Mountain, a typical deity, Transformation Cultivator would have already perished under the very first wave. At this moment, Han Li let out a low sigh. A faint crimson glow began to emerge from his body, as though something was about to be released. Just then, at a distance of over a kilometer from where Han Li was undergoing tribulation, space suddenly distorted. A formation of white light appeared out of thin air. This formation was about 30 meters in diameter, with countless talisman characters drifting within it, emitting a dazzling radiance. Although Han Li was focused on resisting the tribulation, he still noticed this sudden anomaly. His heart stirred slightly. A streak of crimson light flashed from his body. While continuing to rely on the divine essence-fused light to block the falling lightning spheres, he turned his head and looked in that direction with a cold gaze. His vigilance was natural. At such a critical moment, the sudden appearance of an unfamiliar formation near him was not something he could ignore. However, the formation of light seemed somewhat familiar, as if he had seen something similar before. When his spiritual sense swept across the formation, Han Li began to ponder. As the white light formation emitted a low humming sound, it suddenly flickered. A square golden boat emerged from within. The boat appeared to be cast entirely from gold, with extremely intricate craftsmanship. Its surface was densely covered with faint silver talisman characters. Upon seeing those characters, Han Li's expression changed slightly. "These are silver rune scripts. They were Spirit Realm script characters. The golden boat measured around 20 meters in length. The entire surface was engraved with rune script talismans. The large light formation beneath it appeared to be a baseless teleportation formation. Hanley felt a surge of shock. Yet what astonished him even more was the thick yellow dome-shaped barrier at the center of the boat. It was so dense that even his powerful spiritual sense could not penetrate it. Soon after the golden boat appeared, the light formation beneath it began to collapse, fragmenting bit by bit. At the same time, the yellow barrier dissipated, revealing two cultivators clad in golden battle armor. One of them appeared to be an elderly man around 50 or 60 years old, with a goatee. The other looked to be in his 30s, with pale skin and no facial hair. Silver rune scripts were also engraved onto their armor. From time to time, these talisman characters would drift around them, indicating that their armor was of extraordinary value. At the moment, Han Li's spiritual sense swept over them. The divine essence-fused light above him trembled violently, nearly collapsing. Spatial tempering cultivators. One of them was even at the mid-stage of spatial tempering. How could such figures appear here and precisely when he was undergoing tribulation? Could they have come for him? Han Li's expression turned grim as he observed them. In the distance, the caravan also witnessed the sudden appearance of the golden boat and the two armored cultivators. The core formation cultivators were momentarily stunned. However, when Elder Huo saw them, his expression changed drastically. He shouted, "The Golden Court boat! The Deep Heaven Guards! The Deep Heaven Guards!" Could it be that this senior has some connection with Deep Heaven City? The yellow-robed cultivator's face turned pale with disbelief. Elder Huo stared at the golden boat and muttered, "I understand now. That person truly is undergoing a minor tribulation, but he must be a rare ascended cultivator from a lower realm. Since he did not cleanse his essence with the earth-exterminating pill, he triggered two-colored tribulation lightning. These deep heaven guards must have sensed it and come to assist. But what is strange is that they just happened to be nearby." The core formation cultivators were even more shocked upon hearing this explanation. Soon subsequent events seemed to confirm his words. After emerging from the boat, the two spatial tempering cultivators looked at the lightning spheres raining down upon Han Li. They showed a hint of surprise that he had managed to endure for so long. Without hesitation, one of them raised his hand and released a purple talisman. As soon as it left his hand, it emitted a thunderous sound and transformed into a towering, 30-meter-tall humanoid figure composed of light wrapped in purple lightning. The figure had its arms crossed and its upper body bare, exuding a fierce aura. Its face was indistinct, with only a long mustache faintly visible. Meanwhile, the other cultivator released two talismans, one azure, one golden. The moment they were released, they emitted brilliant light and transformed into a 3-meter-long azure spike and a golden hammer. Both were surrounded by azure sparks and golden lightning, respectively radiating astonishing pressure. The second cultivator began to form hand seals, channeling them into the giant figure of light. At once the giant reached out, grasped the azure spike and golden hammer and wielded them. Meanwhile, the cultivator who had released the weapons began chanting in coordination with his companion. The giant raised its head and let out a roar like that of a dragon. It pointed the azure spike toward Han Li, then swung the hammer downward with force. A deafening explosion followed, accompanied by overwhelming lightning. Purple lightning surged across the giant's body. The golden hammer and azure spike emitted blinding light, releasing a stream of purple, azure, and golden lightning. At first, the stream was thin, but in an instant it expanded rapidly, growing from 10 meters to over 300 meters in length. At its peak, the lightning formed into a tri-colored true dragon, illuminating the surrounding sky. The spectacle left all observers stunned. The massive lightning streak vanished in an instant, then reappeared directly above Han Li. Lightning crackled and tri-colored light flashed. Han Li's heart sank and his breathing became shallow. Yet in the next moment, he let out a quiet sigh of relief. The massive lightning had changed direction and struck the dark clouds above instead. Soon crackling sounds filled the air as multicolored lightning surged wildly through the sky. The lightning spheres that had been raining down became sparse. Seeing this, Han Li was greatly surprised that the two cultivators had intervened to help him overcome the tribulation. However, he had no intention of rejecting such assistance. Without hesitation, he descended to the ground. The tribulation clouds remained extremely dangerous. Creating distance from them was the safest course of action. As he moved away, the tri-colored lightning dragon reappeared briefly before dispersing. Countless arcs of lightning spread across the clouds, accompanied by rumbling thunder. Within a few breaths, the dense tribulation clouds thinned and sunlight began to break through. This minor tribulation had been forcibly dispersed. Before allowing himself any relief, Han Li first withdrew the divine essence-fused light and the mountain, then turned his gaze toward the golden boat. From afar, the golden boat drifted closer. The two armored cultivators became clearly visible. Han Li frowned slightly, sensing that this situation might not be entirely favorable. He remained where he was, quietly waiting. Although the golden boat appeared to move leisurely, it was in fact extremely fast. Within a few breaths, it arrived before Han Li. The two cultivators examined him closely. The pale 30-year-old cultivator spoke first in a calm tone. "You are a cultivator who ascended from a lower realm. It is unusual for someone at the early deity transformation stage to do so. Regardless, it is fortunate that we arrived. Come with us." "What do you mean, senior? Where are we going?" Han Li asked calmly, though his heart stirred upon hearing mention of the lower realm. The pale cultivator replied evenly, "What do I mean? Something went wrong during your ascension. Since you did not appear at the Spirit Flight Tower or report to Deep Heaven City, a spatial disturbance occurred during your tribulation. You ascended through a spatial tear. Spirit Flight Tower." Han Li was initially confused, but soon showed a trace of realization. The older cultivator smiled faintly and explained, "That's correct. There are over 1,000 individuals who ascend from lower realms. Each lower realm has a designated spirit flight tower. Normally, ascended cultivators appear directly in Deep Heaven City. However, there are rare cases like yours where complications occur and the cultivator is displaced elsewhere, because such individuals have not taken the earth cleansing pill. They face two-colored tribulation lightning during their first tribulation and often perish. Fortunately, we happened to be nearby on official duty and were able to save your life." The elderly cultivator in golden armor explained, "You have not taken the earth cleansing pill to purge the aura of the lower realm from your body. Because of this, your minor tribulation will manifest as two-colored lightning. No matter how strong you are, survival would be impossible. This time we intervened and dispersed the tribulation for you, but the consequence is that your next tribulation will arrive sooner. In 100 years, you will face your second tribulation. If you consume an earth cleansing pill each year, your aura will gradually transform into that of the spirit realm, preventing your tribulation from becoming two-colored. Our Deep Heaven City provides one pill annually to every ascended cultivator. If your tribulation remains two-colored, each occurrence will grow 3 times more powerful than the last." Han Li blinked and asked, "Senior, does that mean I must remain in Deep Heaven City for the rest of my life?" The pale-faced cultivator replied calmly, "Not necessarily. If you take the earth-cleansing pill continuously for 300 years, the aura from your lower realm will be completely cleansed. At that point, you will no longer be bound to Deep Heaven City." Han Li paused briefly before continuing, "Deep Heaven City may gather ascended cultivators, but surely these pills are not given freely. What is required of us in return?" The older cultivator stroked his beard and smiled faintly. "Fellow Taoist is perceptive. While the earth-cleansing pill is indeed beneficial, it requires rare materials found in the wildlands. You will need to purchase them. However, the details are better explained within the city. For now, you should come with us. If you choose to refuse, we will not force you, but you should be aware of the consequences." Han Li's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this. He fell silent for a moment, glancing toward the clear, cloudless sky in the distance. Afterward, he turned his gaze to the boat before him. Without hesitation, his figure blurred as he stepped aboard. The two golden-armored cultivators exchanged faint smiles. After witnessing the power of the two-colored lightning tribulation, there had been no real alternative. Moreover, as an early-stage deity transformation cultivator, Hanli's survival until their arrival was already remarkable. Once on board, Hanli observed his surroundings and quickly noticed a small-scale spell formation at the center of the vessel. As he examined it, the two cultivators stepped into the formation and beckoned to him. After a brief pause, Hanli joined them. The two cultivators formed hand seals and activated the formation. A low hum sounded as dense light erupted, enveloping all three of them. The older cultivator then flipped his palm, producing a golden plate engraved with numerous silver runic characters. He pressed it onto the deck, and golden light immediately radiated outward, accompanied by dazzling silver talisman patterns. At the same time, the golden boat trembled and released streams of milky white mist. The mist coiled beneath the vessel, circling it, before forming the same light formation Hanli had seen earlier. The entire formation flared brightly, and in the next instant the boat vanished. The formation dispersed without leaving a trace. From a distance, Elder Huo and the core formation cultivators witnessed everything. Ever since the appearance of the golden-armored cultivators, they had remained completely silent, even suppressing their breathing. Only after the golden boat disappeared did they finally release a long breath, exchanging glances filled with relief. The yellow-robed youth hesitated before speaking. Elder Huo, it seems the deep heaven guards are not as terrifying as the legends suggest. Perhaps those rumors are exaggerated. Elder Huo paused before replying, "What do you know? Across the 3 human regions and 7 demon lands, the only place beyond the authority of the 3 human sovereigns and 7 demon kings is Deep Heaven City. Those golden-armored soldiers are among the highest-ranking figures within it. They can travel freely through any region without restriction and may openly kill any human or demon they deem a threat. Their authority is so vast that even the 3 sovereigns regard them with caution. In conflicts against foreign races, the sovereigns and demon kings first seek assistance from Deep Heaven City's elders." I see." The youth's eyes widened in shock. After a moment he added, "My master once told me never to offend a Deep Heaven guard under any circumstances. I also heard that not long ago they spent an entire month slaughtering over 100 cultivator clans. No one knew the reason, and the 3 sovereigns ignored the matter." "That is correct," Elder Huo said. "Although I do not know much about Deep Heaven City, its cultivators rarely appear within human or demon territories. They primarily deal with powerful external enemies. Even when they do appear, it is usually only the golden-armored guards." As the two spoke, the surrounding core formation cultivators listened in silence. Their understanding of the city was limited, and they could only exchange uneasy glances. At that moment, Hanli found himself within a hidden teleportation formation inside an unknown city. The 2 golden-armored cultivators stepped off the boat and replaced several glittering spirit stones within the formation. They then activated the formation again with hand seals. When Hanli saw the crystals, his heart stirred. They were high-grade spirit stones of immense value. Before he could dwell further on it, white light engulfed the boat, and they were transported elsewhere. This time they arrived in an underground cavern with a similar teleportation formation beneath the boat. The 2 cultivators repeated the process, and the boat teleported again. Hanli remained silent, observing everything with a calm expression. The boat continued teleporting repeatedly, a total of more than 20 times. In the past, Hanli had only used mid-grade spirit stones to travel from the heavenly south to the scattered star seas. The repeated use of high-grade spirit stones implied a distance far beyond his previous experience. With another flash, the boat teleported once more. This time Hanli's gaze swept the surroundings, and his heart trembled slightly. He immediately understood that they had arrived at Deep Heaven City. The teleportation formation was situated on an altar-like platform over 30 meters tall, surrounded by 4 cultivators clad in black armor. Although their armor appeared cruder than that of the golden-armored cultivators, silver runes still shimmered across its surface. The platform stood within a vast hall, more than 300 meters wide and over 50 meters high. Apart from the platform, the entire hall was empty. As soon as the golden boat appeared, the 4 black-armored cultivators became alert. However, upon recognizing the golden-armored figures, their expressions relaxed and they rose into the air. Approaching the platform, a tall man with green eyes stepped forward and respectfully knelt. "We pay our respects to the elder heaven gods." Hanli observed them, his expression shifting slightly. All 4 were nascent soul cultivators, 1 at peak stage, 1 at mid-stage, and 2 at early stage. Rise, one of the golden-armored cultivators said. "This is a newly ascended cultivator. I recall your squad is missing a dark azure guard. Perhaps he will serve as your squad leader. Take him to the Spirit Flight Hall and let him rest for the night. We will report to the elders and handle the rest tomorrow." "Yes." The green-eyed man showed no surprise upon learning that Han Li was a deity transformation cultivator. He simply bowed respectfully. The pale cultivator then said, "Follow them. We will discuss other matters tomorrow." Han Li nodded in response. The 3 descended from the platform and walked toward the hall's exit. Han Li noticed that only the green-eyed man accompanied them, while the other 3 remained to guard the platform. It was evident that both the teleportation formation and the golden boat were of great importance, as they required 4 nascent soul cultivators to guard them. Upon leaving the hall, they arrived at a broad road approximately 20 meters wide. Grey stone walls lined both sides, and at regular intervals, sections of the walls were engraved with silver talisman patterns, giving off a subtle, mysterious aura. The road curved in a circular path with a gentle incline. Han Li glanced around but did not dwell on it. The 2 golden-armored cultivators departed in another direction, while the black-armored guard led Han Li onward. At intervals of roughly 1 kilometer, identical gates appeared along the road. Some were closed while others remained open. Through the open gates, Han Li could clearly see identical arrangements: golden boats, elevated platforms, teleportation formations, and nascent soul cultivators standing guard. Each location was similarly empty. As for the closed gates, Han Li attempted to probe them with his spiritual sense, only to find that the silver inscriptions on the walls blocked his perception. Occasionally, other cultivators passed along the road. Most wore black armor and were at the nascent soul stage, though Han Li also encountered several wearing dark azure armor. These individuals possessed deity transformation cultivation and were known as the Dark Azure Guards. When these cultivators noticed Han Li, they cast him brief, curious glances, but did not question him. They continued on their way in an orderly manner, as if following strict discipline. Seeing this, Han Li's brows furrowed slightly. After traveling another 3 kilometers, Han Li saw the surroundings suddenly brighten. A massive hall appeared before him, stretching over 3 kilometers across. Nearly 100 armored cultivators moved about inside, each occupied with their own tasks in an orderly yet busy manner. More than a dozen similar roads connected to the hall, with people constantly passing through them. A faint look of surprise crossed Han Li's face. However, when he lifted his head to examine the ceiling, his heart was immediately shaken. The so-called hall did not have a conventional ceiling. Instead, above it was a cylindrical opening shaped like a ring, resembling the hollow interior of a towering structure. This meant that the entrance they had come through was merely an opening in the wall of a vast tower. This was the first time Han Li had seen such an enormous stone tower. Still, he quickly suppressed his astonishment, and his expression returned to calm neutrality. The large, green-eyed man leading him paid no attention to Han Li's reaction and did not urge him forward. Once Han Li regained his composure, the man simply nodded and continued leading him out of the hall. As soon as Han Li stepped outside, he looked into the distance. His heart gave a sudden jolt. Azure towers rose densely in every direction, extending as far as the eye could see. There were at least 100 of them. Around the bases of these towers were rows of pagodas, connected to clusters of smaller buildings. The tallest pagodas reached nearly 3 kilometers in height. while even the shortest stood no less than 300 meters tall. Aside from their immense scale, the structures themselves appeared plain and unadorned. Seeing such a sight for the first time left Han Li momentarily speechless. After leaving the hall, the two of them transformed into streaks of light and descended toward a building beneath one of the pagodas. The green-eyed man called out to Han Li and guided him into a pavilion that stood 300 meters tall. The pavilion had 10 levels each with its own opening. At the center stood a massive gate 100 meters high, above which the words Spirit Flight Hall were inscribed in silver. The green-eyed man led Han Li up to the 4th level. Upon entering a smaller hall, Han Li saw 7 passageways extending in different directions. Inside, cultivators dressed in various styles gathered together conversing with relaxed smiles. With a single glance, Han Li determined that they were all cultivators at the early deity transformation stage, just like himself. As soon as Han Li and the green-eyed man stepped inside, everyone turned to look at them. Isn't this esteemed nephew Zhuo? Have you brought a new companion for us? A dark-complexioned, white-haired old man asked with a smile. Although the green-eyed man was a late nascent soul cultivator, he did not dare show any negligence. Upon entering the hall, his stern demeanor vanished, replaced with a respectful attitude. He replied, "So it is Senior Liu. This senior was personally escorted here by the Heaven Guards. He did not enter the city through ordinary means." A trace of peculiarity appeared on his face. Could he be a cultivator brought in through the Spirit Flight Tower? Could it be that he ascended from another world? How is he only at the early deity transformation stage? Wasn't it said that one must reach the late stage to ascend? As soon as these words were spoken, the hall fell into a stir. All eyes turned toward Han Li, their expressions filled with curiosity and uncertainty. Han Li responded with a faint smile and offered a polite salute. He said nothing further, while his thoughts moved rapidly. Could these people also have ascended from lower realms? That did not seem likely. If they were natives of the spirit realm, why would they gather here? Wasn't the Spirit Flight Hall connected to ascended cultivators? The green-eyed man exchanged a few brief greetings and gave vague replies to the crowd. Then he led Han Li down one of the passageways to a suite composed of several rooms. The interior resembled a small-scale cave residence. There was a secluded chamber for cultivation, as well as rooms designated for pill refinement and artifact forging. Additionally, each room was protected by restrictive formations that could only be opened using a specific restriction medallion. After observing this, Han Li nodded in quiet approval. The green-eyed man explained a few restricted areas, handed him a medallion, and promptly took his leave before Han Li could ask any questions. Han Li had originally intended to inquire about the situation in Deep Heaven City. At present, he sat in a wooden chair within the main room, casually turning a silver restriction medallion in his hand. His mind began to sort through everything that had occurred since his tribulation. According to his initial plan, he had intended to find a secluded place, rich in spiritual qi, and focus on cultivation. He would first advance into the spatial tempering stage, then spend the remainder of his life pursuing the great Tao. He had never expected that ascended cultivators would carry the aura of another world, transforming even minor tribulations into something far more dangerous. During the first occurrence of the two-colored lightning tribulation, he might have been able to protect himself. However, if it appeared a second time, survival would be uncertain. Because of this, he had followed the two spatial tempering cultivators to Deep Heaven City without much hesitation. Yet after arriving, he discovered that this place was entirely different from any cultivator city he had known. He lacked even the most basic understanding of how it operated. The only thing he was certain of was that this city was closely tied to cultivators who had ascended from lower realms. As these thoughts accumulated, a faint restlessness arose within him. He was just considering whether to seek information from the cultivators outside, particularly regarding how the city treated individuals like himself, when his attention was drawn to a voice from beyond the door. "Fellow Taoist, this old man is called Liu Hedao. Would you care to have a brief conversation?" Han Li paused briefly, then smiled. There was no need for him to take the initiative. Someone had already come to him. So fellow Taoist Liu has come to visit. I am honored, he said while raising the medallion toward the door. A wave of silver mist flowed outward, and the large door slowly opened on its own. Outside stood a white-haired man with a dark complexion. So your surname is Han. I hope my sudden visit is not unwelcome, the old man said politely. Haha, how could that be? Even if you had not come, I was planning to step out myself, Han Li replied with an easy smile. Having experienced countless situations over his cultivation journey, he did not place himself above the other party. The two soon began conversing, as if they were long acquainted. From that esteemed nephew, I heard that the heaven guards personally escorted you here. You must be a cultivator who recently ascended from a lower realm. Which realm would that be? Old Man Liu asked. Which realm? I am not familiar with how the spirit realm refers to the various lower realms, so I cannot answer that for now. How about this? Once I understand it better, I will give you an answer. Could you assist me with that? Han Li replied with a slight smile. He had no intention of revealing his true origins so easily. During his time in the mortal realm, he had been entangled with certain powerful figures from the spirit realm. Whether it was the soaring sky beast or the wolf king Tian Koi, mentioned by Silver Moon, they were not entities he could afford to provoke. Old Man Liu laughed. That was my oversight. You have only just arrived in the spirit realm, so it is natural that you would not know. However, the first generation of ascended cultivators all possess extraordinary potential. Their chances of reaching the spatial tempering stage are far greater than descendants like myself or native cultivators. Because of this, they are highly valued by the elders. Most of them do not even require examination and are directly appointed as Dark Azure guards. The first generation of ascended cultivators. Could Brother Liu explain further? Han Li's expression shifted slightly, his smile becoming more restrained. It is not a secret. In fact, you will understand soon enough after staying in the city for some time, Old Man Liu said with a chuckle. He continued, the first generation refers to cultivators like yourself, those who ascend directly from lower realms at the deity. Transformation stage. The otherworldly aura you carry requires 300 years of earth cleansing pills to fully remove. The direct descendants of ascended cultivators inherit part of this aura. Once they reach the nascent soul stage, they will also face two-colored tribulations. As for people like me, if we do not come to Deep Heaven City and take earth-cleansing pills to eliminate the aura, we will perish. Once the aura is removed, you are free to leave the city. After about 5 generations, the bloodline will no longer carry this aura, and such cultivators are no different from natives of the spirit realm. Han Li blinked and asked, in that case, Brother Liu should have already removed your otherworldly aura after reaching the deity transformation stage. Why remain here? You have noticed something important. The old man replied with a faint smile. Even after removing the aura, very few people are willing to leave Deep Heaven City. I can count only a handful. Not just us native cultivators who enter the city are also reluctant to leave. Oh, that is interesting. Could you explain why? Han Li asked, his expression still composed. The old man spoke in a steady tone. The reason is simple. Within Deep Heaven City, cultivation speed is twice that of other regions. Furthermore, resources from the 3 regions and 7 lands can all be found here. There are even items unique to this city. Brother Han should understand what that implies. What? Could it be that this place contains sacred areas where spirit chi is especially dense? Han Li asked, his interest clearly stirred. Haha, there are indeed several such cultivation sites throughout the city, the old man replied. However, only one of them can compare to those found in the main cities of the 3 sovereigns. More importantly, our city not only receives a steady flow of materials from both human and demon territories, but it also serves as the sole passage between those lands and the wilderness. Because of this, countless rare treasures are brought back from the wilderness. Most cultivators choose to sell or exchange these materials here. Even medicines that can allow one to advance in a single night can be found on the market. Of course, their prices are so high that they are usually beyond reach. The old man paused briefly before continuing. There is another reason why cultivators here are reluctant to leave. Every 10 years, someone from the Council of Elders explains the worldly Tao to the city's cultivators. Many doubts regarding cultivation can be resolved during these sessions. All members of the council are at the integration stage. Opportunities like this cannot be found elsewhere. That is why those who join the city rarely wish to depart. Such benefits. Han Li felt a trace of satisfaction, but his expression soon turned thoughtful. Then why are there so many high-grade cultivators guarding the city? In addition to human cultivators, there are also many demon cultivators stationed here. They occupy the other half of the city. Beyond that, there are numerous demon beasts and body refiners. Half of these low-grade existences originate from within the city, while the other half come from outside. Our Council of Elders alone consists of over 10 integration stage cultivators. With such formidable strength, the city naturally becomes a target for the outer tribes of the wilderness, as well as true spirit-level beings. The Elders have set up an extremely powerful immortal formation, forcing any invading forces to confront the city first. Without such a strong defense, the outer tribes would have already wiped us out. I have heard that if we were to truly engage them in full-scale battle, more than half of the city could be destroyed. Old Man Liu's expression grew solemn. Han Li's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this. More than half destroyed. There is no need for Brother Han to worry excessively, the old man said calmly. An invasion from the outer tribes occurs only once every 60,000 to 100,000 years. Given such long intervals, it is not something you need to concern yourself with now. If an invasion does occur, then it would simply be a matter of life and death. As for those who attempt to flee from Deep Heaven City's defenses, they will be jointly pursued by both human and demon cultivators. Life in the city is stable, but such stability naturally comes with some risk. The last invasion took place 30,000 years ago, so we still have at least another 20,000 years before anything happens. So that is the situation. It seems I was brought here to be of use to Deep Heaven City, Han Li said, stroking his chin in thought. Of course, ascended cultivators of the initial generation have a much higher chance of entering the spatial tempering stage, compared to natives or descendants like myself. Every ascended cultivator is highly valued by the elders and is not easily released. Moreover, in recent years, fewer ascended cultivators have appeared at the Spirit Flight Tower. I have heard that some elders sent threads of spiritual sense down to the lower realms to investigate, but they found nothing. Since Brother Han ascended from a lower realm, did you notice anything unusual? Hearing this, Han Li recalled the matter of the Elder Devil, and his heart stirred slightly. However, his expression remained unchanged as he replied, "Waho, my world was quite normal. That is unfortunate. If Brother Han had discovered anything, the reward would have been considerable. However, the other recently ascended cultivators also had no useful information. I have only heard that the demon clans may have found something in recent years. In any case, the Council of Elders likely will not question you too closely." Han Li smiled faintly and asked, "Earlier Brother Liu mentioned the Dark Azure Guards. Could you explain more about them? Are they the ones I saw wearing azure armor?" "That is correct. The Dark Azure Guards are considered a mid-tier force within the city, and I am one of them. Each Dark Azure Guard commands 10 black-armored guards. To qualify, one must possess Deity Transformation Stage cultivation. However, not every cultivator at that stage can become a Dark Azure Guard. Brother Han should understand the distinction. I have a general idea. Either they lack leadership ability or are not skilled in combat," Han Li said. "Precisely. Since we are discussing this, there are 2 types of guards in Deep Heaven City. One type carries out fixed assignments on a scheduled basis and is free to manage their own time otherwise. However, during their 10-year term, they receive relatively few spirit stones, and their resources are often insufficient. The advantage is that the danger is minimal. The second type takes on missions assigned directly by the Council of Elders. Each completed mission yields significant rewards including spirit stones, treasures, and medicinal items. Naturally, these missions are far more dangerous and often involve dealing with outer tribes in the wilderness. One must consider carefully before accepting them. However, after completing a mission, one is not required to accept another for several decades, or even up to a century, allowing for extended periods of peaceful cultivation. The two roles are not fixed, and one may switch between them as desired. Many thanks for Brother Liu's guidance, Han Li said calmly. The old man chuckled and waved his hand dismissively. They continued speaking for a while longer before the old man stood and took his leave. After he departed, Han Li's smile gradually faded. He returned to the secluded room and began meditating in silence. Meanwhile, the dark-skinned old man returned to where the other deity transformation cultivators were gathered in conversation. When they saw him, they approached at once. Did Brother Liu obtain any useful information? Information, the old man said with a slight shake of his head. That man is extremely cautious. Aside from confirming that he ascended from a lower realm, he revealed nothing else. I merely answered a few of his questions. Hey, that is only natural. He has just arrived in the spirit realm, so caution is expected. In any case, we have no ill intentions toward him. We only wish to befriend him. After all, ascended cultivators possess great potential. The deity transformation cultivators continued their conversation in a relaxed manner, showing no sign of hostility toward Han Li. As for old man Liu, he simply smiled and remained silent. On the following morning, Han Li sat motionless in the secluded room. After some time, he slowly opened his eyes. He rose and walked into the living room, then used his command medallion to open the main door. A white-robed cultivator stood outside, his expression neutral. Greetings, senior, Han Li said immediately, offering a respectful salute. This was the pale-faced man in golden armor from before, though he was now dressed in Confucian robes. The oppressive aura he once carried had diminished, and he appeared far more approachable. Fellow Taoist Han, there is no need for such formality. I have only just arrived. Since Brother Li is occupied, I will be the one meeting you today. My name is Zhao Wugai, the spatial tempering cultivator, said in a noticeably gentler tone. Han Li was slightly surprised and quickly addressed him as Senior Zhao. He then invited him inside and offered him the main seat. After sitting down, Zhao Wugai produced an azure jade pendant and handed it to Han Li. Since you have been here for some time, you likely have questions. I will keep this brief. As an ascended cultivator who was able to withstand the two-colored tribulation for such a long duration, your abilities must be exceptional. Therefore, I have already arranged for you to take the position of a dark azure guard. This is your identity token. Keep it safe. In due time, you will assume command of 3rd Squad 56. They are the group of 4 you saw at the teleportation hall yesterday. Han Li did not immediately accept it. After a moment of hesitation, he said, I have only just arrived and am unfamiliar with many things. Would it not be too hasty to assign me such a position? Zhao Wugui chuckled softly. There is no need for modesty, fellow Taoist Han. Every ascended cultivator is appointed as a dark azure guard upon arrival. Most of them are highly capable. As for understanding the city, you will become familiar with it after residing here for a year. Han Li's gaze shifted slightly before he finally accepted the jade pendant. In that case, I will not refuse. Upon closer inspection, he saw that silver rune patterns were engraved upon it, along with the golden inscription 3rd Squad 56. Seeing that Han Li had accepted the token, Zhao Wugui nodded in satisfaction. He then began explaining general knowledge about the city. Some of the information overlapped with what old man Liu had mentioned, while other parts were entirely new. All of it was useful. Zhao Wugui then took out a white jade slip from his storage pouch and handed it over. That is enough for now. This place is only a temporary residence for ascended cultivators and is not suitable for long-term use. All cultivators at the nascent soul stage and above are assigned their own residence within Deep Heaven City. However, the quality of the residence depends on your own efforts. You can learn more when you visit the Jade Fault Pavilion. This jade slip contains a map of the city. Study it carefully. For the first month after your arrival, you are not required to take on any assignments. However, after 1 month, you will be issued a set of dark azure armor. With that, he rose and took his leave. Hanley expressed his thanks respectfully and escorted him out.